Lately, I've been talking about issues that I've been having with, metalcore or just the metal scene in general, right? But today I want to celebrate the scene and look at the albums that have helped redefine the music scene for us, whether it's deathcore, metalcore, post-hardcore, mathcore. Going through these albums, I just want to talk about the genre-defining records over the years. We're going to start from 1997 and move up till the present time. Let's not waste any more time. That's enough chit chat. So the genre-defining core albums and why they were so special. We're going to go back to 1997. So Hatebreed was arguably one of the first metalcore bands alongside bands like Shy Hulud. So this is the record. Satisfaction is the Death of Desire. Yeah, Hatebreed metalcore, that's the thing, right? Because it's in discussion. Hatebreed's a hardcore band that had some a little bit of metal elements. So they were kind of helped define what the metalcore sound was going to be, and people back in the day kind of called it metallic hardcore. But this record is one of the more defined hardcore records of all time. I've known about it, even though I never really listened to much Hatebreed myself. Let's go to 1998 with a post-hardcore record with an album title like The Shape of Punk to Come. This was really a bold title to put on an album, and Refuse really solidified themselves with being a very genre defining band. This is my favorite record of all time. Go! But yeah, The Shape of Punk to Come was one of the most genre-defining records that was unlike anything else, especially for its time. Then we're moving on to 1999. Of course, the Dillinger Escape Plan changed a lot of things with their record Calculating Infinity. Just think about it. 1999, there wasn't a lot of screaming, right? It was starting to get used to obviously metal too, right? But to have these really aggressive, chaotic, hardcore music that was so in your face, is just so out of the norm of everything. But yeah, another one that also helped refine the scene is obviously Converge, Jane Doe. So why Converge blew up is just, again, it was unlike anything else. There was a big revolution of these super angry bands that was just, again, in your face. It's chaotic, it's mathy. It was against the norm of even other heavy music at the scene. Yeah, dude, I didn't have a 2000s metalcore album. I'm looking at these. I feel 2000s was a little bit of a slow year for the core world. Let's move on to 2002 though, okay? 2002, we had Norma Jean, again, another band that was just continuing what Dillinger Escape Plan, Converge was doing, mathy, in your face, raw music, and this is their classic, Memphis Will Be Laid to Waste. Continuing what Dillinger was doing, just aggressive, raw, and also it blends in some emo elements too. This is starting the emo trend a little bit too with these softer moments. But yeah, Norma Jean, this was a big record for the scene too. So let's move on to 2003. We got this certified hood classic. This is one of the biggest metalcore songs ever made. This band helped change the metalcore world with Waking the Fallen because it has strong metal components, right? Where Hatebreed had a lot of hardcore elements. So this is bridging that gap with a lot of metal. And moving forward, Avenged Sevenfold really drifted from the core sound and just went into more metal sound and prog. But Waking the Fallen was such a good record that still had hardcore metal elements and breakdowns and stuff. But yeah, this was a big pivotal album to introduce a lot of metal. Another big album, you guys have already guessed it, but this is a personal favorite of mine, but Thrice. Thrice took Refuse's idea of a lot of non-cookie cutter structures, aggressive screaming vocals, but they brought in a lot of post-hardcore and a lot of like melody to the music. So this album got them a lot of commercial success. They got signed to Island Records. Island Records is a big label, and for them to be playing a lot of like metalcore-ish kind of music, like with post-hardcore, was just and with commercial success, this was a breakthrough record. Next up, we are moving on to 2004. Can we take a guess what's in 2004? Under Oath, They're Only Chasing Safety. I can't spoil it. I can't spoil it. Maybe I have a few. Let's first start up with, that's right, Killswitch Engage. So yeah, Killswitch Engage were huge. I slept on them growing up. Like, I wasn't really into them, but there's no denying like their importance to the metalcore world. They, just like Avenged Sevenfold, introduced a lot of like teenagers and kids into like metalcore music by introducing a lot of metal elements. But Howard Jones having the clean vocals just made them kind of like commercially successful because the dude has a great voice. But in 2004, we had The Fall of Troy. These guys were a post-hardcore band that was continuing what like Refuse and Dillinger doing, but with a lot of like melody and a lot of like emo kind of style. Very different, but this is their classic FCP remix. Guitar Hero 3, anyone?
Slow down, this is slipping through my mind. This conversation has run out of time.
These guys also took ideas from At the Drive-In, which could have been included in this list. And these bands like Fall of Troy are arguably one of the originators of like the future of like swancore, right? Like Gavin Dance and those bands owe a lot to bands like the Fall of Troy and At the Drive-In for introducing the sound like early on. Thomas Erik is one of the most important guitarists, I think, in the scene too. Continuing, we still got a lot of records in 2004, man. We also got Lamb of God, Ashes of the Wake. So yeah, it's funny because Lamb of God, arguably, are they metalcore? A lot of people don't think so, but you know, this album helps introduce a lot of people, like a lot of younger kids, into like, you know, just playing guitar, because the riffage stands out. Same with Randy's vocals. Like, this is a goated record to a lot of people and help get a lot of kids into metal music and also just like metalcore music as well. Another record from 2004, because 2004 was a crazy good year for the scene. Holy shit. We also had Under Oath with They're Only Chasing Safety. My personal opinion, this is actually my least favorite record. I did not like this record, but I definitely know this was commercially huge. It's funny because I actually do like this record now. It grew on me. So yeah, this is one of the most defining emo records. This album was on like the billboards. It was also on the OC, a popular TV show back in the day.
What you say? Oh, that you only meant well.
But yeah, so like this record just was it started the emo trend with the hair covering the face, those cringy days, but it was melodic, it was commercially successful, there was a lot of screaming in it. Now, moving forward, we got another record from 2004. So another record that was really important was Misery Signals with Of Malice and the Magnum Hearts. Misery Signals was hardcore but had a lot of emotional undertones to it. They are arguably one of the big, like the forefathers, or the founding fathers, I mean, of melodic hardcore.
This time, it was our summer.
Yes, Controller is their best record. That's exactly how I feel. But I definitely know that this record played a massive role, arguably a little bit more of an important role than Controller. That's why I'm using it as an example. But let's move on to the next year now. We are moving on to 2005. We got Trivium with Ascendancy. Yeah, I know, Trey. I'm going to be missing out on a lot of records, but Bleeding Mascara, that's a classic metalcore song. But yeah, they played a big role too. But talking about Trivium now, this is one of the metal bands just like Lamb of God that arguably, are they even metalcore? Not really, but they introduced a lot of kids into metal music, but they still had core elements in terms of just like upbeat, almost like punk kind of energy, but with like metal riffage. Personally, they weren't up to my speed. I enjoy them now though, but I was listening to other stuff like this other genre defining record, Protest the Hero, Kazaya. Although Protest the Hero is like really important in the prog metalcore realm, which is still kind of niche, they played a massive role just like other bands like Between the Buried and Me and Sixth and Dillinger Escape Plan to get the more like nerdy metalheads into this style of music where it's a lot more technical. This record was extremely forward thinking. Like they were 18 years old when I think they wrote it, and the structures, the melodies is so complex, especially for its time. Very, very ambitious record, and it's still unlike anything else in the scene. So Kazaya is a masterclass in my opinion of just prog metalcore. But let's move on to another record. So this is probably the most important record in 2005. This brought metalcore to the masses. Just like Avenged Sevenfold, this was a huge one. Bullet for My Valentine, The Poison.
Let's go!
So I'm looking at Wikipedia, it got released 2005. So we're just going to say 2005, but this was obviously a massive, massive record. This is a gateway band. So this is like the metalcore world getting much more like accessible. It's got a lot of melody, it's got a lot of hooks, it's very like guitar driven too. When Guitar Hero and like also Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, a lot of video games were introducing this style of music. Like this was such a big record. Let's move on to the next year, 2006. 2006 is when things started to get a little bit heavier. Job for a Cowboy dropped their record. Well, technically it was an EP, Doom, but I'm still going to mention it because this was a major EP back in the day. So Entombment of a Machine live. And more, Bring on the Rise and Pray for Plagues. So yeah, this is when they took metalcore ideas but started bringing death metal elements to it. So this is when deathcore pretty much started with like, you know, Job for a Cowboy, Bring on the Horizon. Bring on the Horizon made it commercially successful because I remember back in the day, girls were going crazy for Bring on the Horizon because they all found Ollie Sykes hot. So looks, whether you agree or disagree, looks are extremely important for bands. And we got a few more albums in 2006. All That Remains, The Fall of Ideals. So another metalcore band that got commercially successful by being heavy, but also just melodic. Yeah, so this era of like metalcore, deathcore was massive. You know, it was like start of the emo trend where a lot of people were wearing like a lot of black. I still wear a lot of black, but you know, hair that would just cover your face. I'm still doing that today. Guys, I'm still emo, I guess, man. But like, this was such a important record, just like the deathcore records that introduced a lot of kids into just heavy styles of music. We're going a little bit more niche. Okay, yeah, this band is a little bit more niche, but they helped redefine the guitar world, influencing bands like Periphery and introducing djent before djent became even a thing. This is 6-string guitars, but like tuned down to G sharp. So very low. There wasn't a lot of bands doing this kind of style, very innovative guitar work. This band was very forward thinking. So Sixth, Death of a Dead Day, and this song is called Bland Street Bloom. Look, you know, a lot of the stuff that we're checking out, Tears Don't Fall and other things, like they're classics for its time, but then there's bands like Sixth that even today, it still sounds so fucking forward thinking. Like if I go to play this bridge, it still sounds more advanced than a lot of like bands that we're listening to today. Also, look, I could be talking it out of my ass, but I've always had this opinion. Sixth is one of the first bands to play tapping riffs while playing open like notes too. Then Protest the Heroes started doing it in a bunch of other bands, and now it's like littered in the scene, bands just doing taps and then hitting those open notes. Back in the day, it used to be either you're tapping or you're doing a riff, but not like in between. Sixth, I don't remember, because I was playing a lot of guitar back in the day. I don't remember any other band that was playing guitar quite like that. So I do think Sixth is the founding father of doing the taps plus playing open notes and stuff. Another one, this was commercially successful, and this was super forward thinking. Under Oath completely revamped their style with Define the Great Line, which is one I consider one of the best records of all time. So Under Oath could have just continued making like that emo music that made them super commercially successful, but instead they did a 180 and made a dark, proggy metalcore record that, again, this is one of the most influential records. I know like people like Fit for a King today and stuff, and like Silent Planet are heavily influenced by this record. So the darker, ambient, non-cookie cutter metalcore that we hear today, a lot of it is influenced by Under Oath, Define the Great Line. So let's move on to the next year, 2007, the year for deathcore. So just like Bring the Horizon, friggin' Mitch was a star. Deathcore, like this band put deathcore on the map, and a big reason is because a lot of people found Mitch like decent looking, just like Ollie Sykes. Again, that's super important. But yeah, Suicide Silence was also just chaotic, heavy deathcore music, getting a lot of people into heavy shit. So another important record in 2000, dude, there's a lot of records in 2007. Another one, Parkway Drive, Horizons, commercially successful, blending metal with punk elements. Woo. So yeah, Parkway Drive was managed to make like accessible metalcore music. It's like, it's melodic at times too when it needs to be, but usually it is pretty aggressive, and it just has defined breakdowns. I was never a big Parkway Drive fan, but I definitely knew of their importance. Yeah, of course, As I Lay Dying, of course. An Ocean Between Us is a big album too. You can argue that Shadows or Security is probably their record that kind of like broke through, but An Ocean Between Us was definitely like a very, very big, important record. 2007 was an insane year, man. This record right here changed prog metalcore. Colors by Between the Buried and Me. You know, they took ideas from Dream Theater, being like making big progressive metal albums, that this entire record flows as one giant song, which seems like a big deal to like this generation right now. A lot of people are like, oh my God, I can't fathom that. I need like 3-minute songs. But back in the day, they weren't that taboo, right? So Colors is just a record that brought metalcore and Dream Theater elements and just showed a lot of kids progressive metal, including me. So another record, like this is going to be a little bit different, but like I said, guys, we have so many records that are really important. The introduction of Swancore. So yeah, Johnny Craig, one of the most polarized but most important vocalists to the scene. Back in the day, Downtown Battle Mountain, he was like a god. His vocals, his R&B style vocals was like unlike anybody else in this scene. This style of music, like I said, is like what Fall of Troy was doing a little bit, but a lot more like weird and quirky, but also very like R&B-ish and emo. Another album that was genre defining is Black Dahlia Murder. Nocturnal was another important record. This is not even really core music, so but it still was like introducing kids into like, you know, like melodic death metal. So yeah, the thing about Black Dahlia Murder is that their music is a little bit more accessible than most, like, especially death metal bands. And I think that's why they had such a big following. But let's move on to the next year now. I think, oh wait, we can talk about August Burns Red. August Burns Red was a big record. Messengers back in 2007. But let's move on to the next year. So 2008, I do have a tag attack here. Of course, Stick Stickly. From Someday came Suddenly. So yeah, the introduction to crabcore, that is like one of the biggest memes. This band, alongside like bands like Bless the Fall and I guess like other risecore bands, was like the start of risecore. I'll be honest, this is where I started to lose interest in the metalcore scene. When risecore started to rise, I started to not rise. I started to dip. But another record that was very important in 2008 that I think it just sounds a lot better personally is Veil of Maya, The Common Man's Collapse. This is deathcore, but there was no other deathcore band like this. That's why they stood out. They were riffy, they were melodic, they were chaotic. It's almost like stuff like Between the Bear to Me, but much more condensed. The riffage was just what stands out. For guitar players and stuff, this was just another revolutionary album for like guitar players. Another one, you know, I gotta show the boys some love. So yeah, just like Sixth and those bands, these are records that are a little bit more niche, but also helped change the guitar world. Like I know bands like Polaris and stuff are like heavily influenced by Protest Hero. A lot of bands are still influenced by this sound of just a lot of like guitar riffage, guitar porn. Yeah, just like BT Bam, there was a movement of bands like the Dillinger Escape Plan, Sixth, Protest the Hero, The Human Abstract, Between the Bear to Me, Animals as Leaders. It was like those bands that were like for like the guitar nerds and more the prog metalcore people. And like, so Protest the Hero played a major role in just point A to point B structures, a lot of variety and riffage, and just also a lot of melodies and almost like genre blends. It's like power metal, emo, like metalcore and stuff. So Fell Silent is one of those bands that helped introduce gent music. Yes, this was a big one. Although they went a little bit more underground than other bands, people think of Periphery and like Tesseract. But before that, Fell Silent dropped The Hidden Words in 2008. So this is the song Immerse. You know, Meshuggah obviously did the guitar sound, but I'm talking about for metalcore audience. Fell Silent eventually became, the members drifted off and started Monuments and Tesseract. So before those bands, it was Fell Silent. See, now we're starting to bring like the 7-string kind of riffage, a lot of like lower note riffage, right? This was back in 2008 though. So yeah, arguably that is like the introduction to gent music for metalcore audience, right? Like if we're not talking about Meshuggah. But let's move on to the next year, because 2008 was also a stacked year, but 2009, this album changed the guitar world. Animals as Leaders, the self-titled record. So why this record is so like revolutionary is because Tosin Bossy's guitar playing style is unlike anybody else. The tapping runs and also the thumping, and thumping is like used a bunch today. Also gent elements. This record was also produced by Misha Mansour even before Periphery 1 came out. This is just forward-thinking instrumental music. But speaking of Periphery, this album, this is a massive one. Periphery 1.